Hello, dear viewers, in the second video of our series about daily life in ancient Egypt. In the previous video, I talked about how Egyptian civilization is one of the greatest and oldest in the world, and I mentioned how we will cover this series of videos. So I will provide you with the link to the previous video in the description so that you are aware of all aspects of these videos. But in today's video, we will talk about the chronological sequence of ancient Egyptian civilization and how researchers and archaeologists divide this civilization into eras and periods. We will discuss each era separately in a few minutes to understand what was present in these periods and what distinguished them. But first, please support me by liking the video and subscribing to the channel to receive all updates. Egypt's history is the longest continuous history of a state in the world, spanning over 7,000 years before the Common Era. Egypt is distinguished by the presence of the Nile River, which traverses its land and is considered a contributing factor to the rise of its ancient civilization. Additionally, Egypt's geographical location is notable, as it connects the continents of Asia and Africa and has links to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. Archaeological studies indicate that humans inhabited Egypt since the early Stone Age. Therefore, Egypt's history is a series of interconnected stages, with each era building upon the contributions of previous periods. No historian of Egypt's history can fully comprehend it without starting with the study of its earliest stage, which is the Stone Ages. Due to the length of these periods, researchers have divided them into three stages: the Lower, Middle, and Upper Paleolithic. Researchers have discovered traces of the first stage, which spans from around 230,000 to 100,000 BCE in the Egyptian deserts or in nearby hills close to the valley. These traces consist of stone tools, some of which are polished, giving axes three faces in a general pyramidal shape. As for the Middle Paleolithic period, which ranges from around 100,000 to 35,000 BCE in Egypt, most of the findings are in the form of small-sized geometrically shaped flakes representing tools. It is noteworthy that researchers have not found skeletal remains of humans from these earlier periods in Egypt. Regarding the Upper Paleolithic period, which ranges from around 35,000 to 12,000 BCE, its traces have been discovered in southern Egypt. The Middle Stone Age extends from 12,000 to 8,000 BCE and is considered a transitional period between the Upper Paleolithic and the later Neolithic period. Its artifacts include finely crafted small stone tools with various geometric shapes that were prevalent in the preceding era. The Neolithic period, also known as the pre-dynastic era or prehistoric era, spans from 8,000 to 3,200 BCE in Egypt. This period witnessed diverse cultural innovations and developments. It marked a multifaceted cultural revolution where agriculture emerged as a necessity due to the increasing aridity in the ancient Arabian Peninsula. This shift pushed humans to cultivate their own food as nature could no longer sustain them, leading to migration from the deserts to the fertile plains along both sides of the Nile and its delta. This migration was facilitated by the Nile's current form, established around 14,000 BCE. Agriculture also prompted the establishment of settlements near cultivated areas, giving rise to villages and eventually cities. Specialized occupations emerged as surplus produce led to the development of pottery for storage. This period saw the beginnings of art, religion, administration, writing, and language. Notably, the emergence of administration was driven by two primary factors: the agricultural community's need for security to protect their crops, and the natural barriers of the surrounding deserts, making Egypt relatively isolated and secure from external threats. The earliest seeds of art, religion, administration, writing, and language sprouted in this era, culminating in the later stages of the Copper Age, from 4,500 to 3,200 BCE. This period witnessed the rise of two distinct civilizations: the Naqada civilization in Upper Egypt and the Gurza civilization in Lower Egypt. The Naqada civilization in the southern region of Egypt remained relatively independent, while the Gurza civilization in the north interacted and exchanged influences with neighboring civilizations. Archaeological evidence, such as stone artifacts, pottery, and artistic motifs, indicates the cultural interactions and migrations from the ancient Arabian Peninsula, bringing with them their deity Horus, symbolized in Egyptian civilization by the falcon, leading to the migrants being called Shemsuhor, or followers of Horus. This migration significantly influenced Egypt linguistically, religiously, artistically, and socially. One notable aspect of this era was the dominance of followers of Horus, who established two kingdoms, one in the Delta and another in Upper Egypt, with distinct political and religious capitals, rulers, and crowns. The north, with its capital likely at current-day Damanhur, managed to unify Egypt by incorporating the south. However, this unity was short-lived as the south eventually separated from the north, leading to Egypt being divided into two kingdoms, each with its political and religious centers, deities, kings, and crowns. The white crown for the southern kingdom and the red crown for the northern kingdom. The early dynastic period, also known as the Archaic period, is a time frame that extends from 3150 to 2686 BCE. During this period, the Upper Egypt Kingdom sought to unify with the Delta Kingdom. To achieve this goal, they engaged in fierce wars that culminated in the unity of both regions. The Scorpion King Macehead and Narmer's Palette are among the most significant artifacts that illustrate the wars between these regions. The Scorpion King battled the northern people and emerged victorious. But it was Narmer who achieved unity by being crowned with the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt. Thus, Egypt unified around 3200 BCE, and Narmer became the first king of a ruling Egyptian dynasty, likely bearing the title Mena. The hallmark of this period is the establishment of a unified pharaonic government and the use of writing to record the state's history, marking the beginning of constructing the early pharaonic tombs. This period encompasses the first and second dynasties, with the first dynasty around 3050 to 2890 BCE led by Narmer, the first pharaoh of the ruling dynasty. As for the second dynasty, around 2890 to 2686 BCE, it witnessed a growth in the pharaoh's tombs. The Old Kingdom lasted from around 2686 to 2181 BCE, encompassing dynasties the 3, 4, V, and 6. Researchers refer to this period as the Age of the Pyramids due to the significant pyramid construction during this time, especially in the 3rd and 4th dynasties. In the 3rd dynasty, approximately 2686 to 2613 BCE, King Zoser, the founder of this dynasty, reigned and built the first Egyptian pyramid in history, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara. This marked the beginning of pyramid-shaped tombs in Egypt. Following that, the 4th dynasty, approximately 2613 to 2498 BCE, under King Snefru, who was the father of King Khufu, witnessed the construction of the famous pyramids at Giza. This dynasty, with around 9 kings, is renowned for these monumental structures, defining the era known as the Pyramid Builders. Around 2500 BCE, the Minoan civilization emerged. The Minoans, named after their legendary ruler Minos, were one of the earliest civilizations in Greece and Europe, dating back to the Bronze Age. Their civilization thrived on the island of Crete, reaching its peak in the 3rd millennium BCE. Moving on to the 5th dynasty, approximately 2498 to 2345 BCE, led by King Userkaf, this period saw the construction of sun temples, particularly notable in Abu Sir, established by King Userkaf. Lastly, the 6th dynasty, approximately 2345 to 2181 BCE, ruled by King Teti, known for the pyramid texts, included about 8 kings during this era. These texts were significant religious and funerary writings associated with the pyramid complexes of this dynasty. The days of the Old Kingdom came to an end primarily due to economic reasons. The kings of this era built grand pyramids that lacked economic utility, allocated vast estates and agricultural lands to fund perpetual religious rituals. and granted priest lands while exempting them from many duties, thus burdening other, less fortunate Egyptian classes. This led to severe weakness in Egypt, resulting in the independence of provincial governors, the influx of Arab Bedouin tribes into northern Egypt and the Delta, the disruption of trade with the Levant, and security disturbances. These conditions persisted throughout the 7th and 8th dynasties in the Delta and the capital region of Mena, but stability was achieved during the 9th and 10th dynasties. Egypt was then dominated by three major powers: the Arab Bedouin force, who were concentrated in the Delta with Menf as their capital; the Ahanasians, who were based in the Fayum region with Anaja as their capital; the Tybians, with Thebes as their capital. Intense conflicts erupted among these forces, ultimately ending in Thebes' victory and the reunification of Egypt for the second time under the leadership of Mentuhotep II. King Mentuhotep II is considered the greatest king of the 11th dynasty. He restored Egypt's unity, protected its eastern borders, and built a temple and tomb to the west of Thebes. He flattened two hills beside the mountain overlooking Thebes and constructed his temple and tomb on them. This architectural innovation inspired Queen Hatshepsut's architect in building her temple in the same style next to the king's temple and tomb. Mentuhotep II left behind several kings who adopted the name associated with the god Montu. However, the days of this dynasty ended in 1991 BCE, and the 12th dynasty followed. Its founder was King Amenemhat I. The names Amenemhat, Amun is in the forefront, and Senusret, son of the gods, and Sesostris, dominated the kings of this dynasty. They are remembered for relocating the capital from the far south to the Lahun region north of the Fayum, where they built their pyramids. They also secured Egypt's eastern borders and promoted Egyptian trade with the Syrian coast. Egyptian texts mention that the Egyptian fleet's ships were built with Syrian cedarwood. Additionally, the ancient Egyptian language reached its peak during the Middle Kingdom. However, this state weakened due to internal conflicts, competition among members of the ruling family for the throne, and external factors, migration of Nubians from the south and Arab tribes from the north, which weakened the Egyptian economy. Thus, the days of this state ended in 1782 BCE. The Second Intermediate Period is one of the weakest periods in Egyptian history, as the rulers of Egyptian provinces gained independence and the country fell under foreign control, whether from the north or the south. This period included the rule of dynasties from the 13th to the 17th. Egypt was occupied by the Hyksos during this time, with their effective control over Egypt starting around 1730 BCE being the most significant negative event in Egypt's history during this period. They ruled during the 15th, 16th, and 17th dynasties. Their name means rulers of foreign lands, according to Manetho, and rulers of foreign countries, according to Gardner. When the princes of Thebes, Seqen-en-Retau and his sons Kamosi and Amosa, forcefully expelled them from Egypt and pursued them into Palestine, this marked the beginning of the new kingdom in Egypt. The New Kingdom of Egypt is considered one of the greatest periods in its ancient history. It's not an exaggeration to say that every civilization has its heroic era, and Egypt's pharaonic era achieved greatness with the rise of the New Kingdom. The Egyptians established an empire that extended from the Euphrates in the north to Sudan in the south. Egypt was feared by neighboring nations, and many contemporary states in the region sought friendship and good relations with it. The New Kingdom encompassed three powerful dynasties, the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties. At the beginning of the 18th dynasty, Egypt continued its traditions in administration, religion, art, and foreign relations. The early kings of this dynasty, from its founder King Amosi I to Queen Hatshepsut, prioritized internal affairs above all else. However, during the reign of Queen Hatshepsut, 1490 to 1467 BCE, two factions emerged, each advocating for its principles to uplift Egypt. Hatshepsut led the first faction, supported by senior state officials and high priests of the god Amun. She believed that Egypt's advancement relied on cultural refinement and economic prosperity, surpassing neighboring nations. The second faction, led by Thutmose III, the legitimate heir to the throne of Egypt, advocated for Egypt's rise through military strength, expansion, and control over neighboring lands. This period began with the 21st dynasty and continued until the 31st dynasty, spanning from 1069 to 332 BC. During the 21st dynasty, Egypt was under the rule of two royal families, one in the north, led by King Semendez, whose reign extended from the delta to Asyut with Tanis, San al-Hagar, as its capital, and the other in the south, headed by the priest Hrihor, who made Tebez his capital. Harmony prevailed between the two ruling families, leading to an alliance that unified them under the rule of Banjem, the king of the south. However, Egypt was weak in its relations with the Levant to the extent that the king of Byblos expelled the Egyptian envoy Hrihor because he couldn't afford the price of the wood he desired to purchase from Byblos. Following this, the Assyrian occupation of Egypt took place. A unique phenomenon prevailed in the ancient Near East, where every power that emerged sought to control the entire region, seeing it as vital for its security and economic prosperity. Thus, Assyria sought to control the Levant, which it achieved through the efforts of Sennacherib and Esarhaddon. Egypt realized that occupation was imminent, prompting its king Taharqa to encourage Palestinians and cities along the Syrian coast to revolt against Assyria. It's likely that Egypt was behind the revolt in Tyre, which Esarhaddon himself besieged. He then left it besieged and turned towards Egypt, where he captured its capital, Memphis. Consequently, all rulers of Egyptian provinces acknowledged Assyrian sovereignty, paying tribute to its king. After some years, King Taharqa revolted against the Assyrians again. However, Assyria's king Ashurbanipal sent an army that crushed the revolt, heading south to Tebez and occupying it. Despite the Egyptians' second revolt attempt, the Assyrians prevailed, reaching Tebez. Then after that, the 26th dynasty emerged, with Psamtik I as its founder, considered one of Egypt's greatest kings. He managed to expel the Assyrians from Egypt with the help of Lydia's kings, and also succeeded in annexing the south to his kingdom in the delta. Following Psamtik I, several kings ruled, including Necho II, Psamtik II, Apries, Ahmose II, and Psamtik III, with Necho II standing out among them for his achievements and actions. The kings of this dynasty worked diligently to revive the Egyptian cultural aspects that prevailed during the Old and Middle Kingdoms, whether in language, art, religion, pharaonic titles, or the style of inscriptions. However, fate did not spare them, as Egypt quickly fell under Persian invasion. The Persians managed to control Egypt after the Battle of Pelusium, Tel El Farama, led by King Cambyses II in 525 BC. However, Egypt did not accept foreign rule. Instead, it established ruling dynasties contemporaneous with the Persians on parts of its territory, the 27th dynasty. Egypt engaged in fierce battles with the Persians, receiving military aid from Athens. Thus, the war continued intermittently between the two sides from 404 BC to 332 BC. During this period, the 28th, 29th, and 30th Egyptian dynasties ruled. In 333 BC, Alexander the Great defeated the Persians at the Battle of Issus and entered Egypt the following year, welcomed by the Egyptians as their liberator from oppressive Persian rule. Alexander died in 323 BC, and his generals divided his empire among themselves, with Egypt falling under the command of Ptolemy. This marked the establishment of a new ruling dynasty in Egypt. Egypt became under the rule of Ptolemy, the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty, after Alexander's death. And this dynasty continued to reign until the Roman occupation of Egypt in 30 BCE. Some of the key aspects of this era were the transfer of the capital to Alexandria, where the Egyptian land theoretically became the property of the ruler. The best and largest lands were granted to the Greeks, especially the military, while Egyptian farmers became tenants working on state-owned lands or owning small plots. The state monopolized the cultivation and production of oil-producing plants like sesame, castor oil, flaxseed oil, sorghum, and fenugreek. It also controlled trade, importing wood, metals, wine, olive oil, fruits, slaves, and horses while exporting wheat in return. Writing and language. The Ptolemies used the ancient Egyptian language in legal documents, laws, and decrees, particularly those related to taxation. They employed hieroglyphic and demotic Egyptian scripts in their writings, and also used the Coptic script with Greek letters, as seen in inscriptions on the Rosetta Stone, which dates back to the Greek period. At the end of today's video, I hope I have successfully clarified the differences and features between these different eras. I would appreciate your support by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video to continue discussing daily life in ancient Egypt. In the upcoming video, we will explore the historical aspect of the lives of ancient Egyptians and how they viewed their homeland and its importance to them. Until the next time, God bless you all.